Alice, the spring selling season, it's coming to an end. So how have you seen the market play out?
It's been a really interesting spring this year, actually, and we're actually seeing it morph into summer. Often when December 1 rolls around, the season sort of calms down a little bit, but this year I think we're going to feel that sort of pent-up energy that we've got right now going right up until Christmas. And I think the market's a lot stronger than what we expected it to be, because I think it's sort of, we don't have enough stock. It's as simple as that there aren't enough listings for people to buy. So we're seeing very strong clearance rates, particularly in Melbourne and Sydney.
That interesting dynamic you're talking about of flowing into summer, I mean, is that because of what we've been talking about with the cutting of interest rates and the election? What's happening out there?
It's all those elements that I think we had the election in May, and then everybody was kind of like thinking, what is going to happen here? Do I wait? Do I hold out? Do I sell? Do I buy? What's going to actually happen? Now things are finally settling, and I think there is now that pent-up energy to buy before Christmas. I think people who were on the fence are thinking, let's just bite the bullet now and do it, because we are also expecting prices to rise into 2020. So if you do need to get into that sweet spot, you kind of need to get it before Christmas, before things will go up probably next year even more so than what they already have, particularly in Melbourne and Sydney.
Oh, so much about seller sentiment. So where have the sellers been most active around the country, Alice?
So definitely, when we look at Sydney, it's definitely in Mossman in Sydney, and then we can see in Victoria it's in Reservoir, and in Queensland Surfers Paradise has most number of auctions. SA is South Australia's Prospect, and ACT is Canberra.
Right, okay, so Mossman there, one of the best suburbs in Sydney for living, of course, and the best suburb for auctions.
And this is a really interesting example of a suburb. So it's got the most, it's also the most searched properties on Domain are coming from Mossman, and it's got the most auctions. So what we're seeing is this absolutely heat in that market over there, and it's the absolute jewel in the property market in Sydney. It's the fourth most expensive suburb, and it's known for its beautiful trophy homes. But a lot of international buyers and professionals have their eye on Mossman.
So most auctions, high price. Most bidders, most searched.
Yep. So if you own in Mossman, you'd be feeling pretty happy and chuffed right about now. And you can see we've got a beautiful house that sold in October this year for $16 million in Mossman.
Oh my goodness!
It's a historic Queen Anne Federation residence, and it really revived the suburbs' otherwise quite slow high-end market. And this is obviously the ultra prestige end of the Mossman market. It's not the medium price in Mossman, but it is one of Sydney's most expensive areas.
Sometimes it feels like it might be when you're walking down the street in Mossman. I mean, you think, yep, okay, this is pretty cool.
It's pretty special. It's pretty special.
Okay, moving down to Melbourne, Reservoir seems to be the #1 location there.
Yeah, and I love this because it's a bridesmaid suburb, but it's really now earned its place on the podium in Melbourne. It's an up-and-coming suburb, but it's absolutely there. And buyers priced out of the inner east are now heading here, in lieu of sort of going to Fitzroy, Northcote, Thornbury and Preston, which has been more expensive. You know, the median house price is $690, which is well below the Melbourne median of $855,000. So it's actually got something for everybody. And if you do want to buy at the higher end, you still can there. But I just think it's a fantastic story that you can be in a beautiful area of Melbourne and not have to pay those really lofty heights. And we can see there was a sale this year in Hewitt Street that went for 1.3, and it's a beautifully renovated Daco home. Comes with a basketball court, would you believe? And at this price went well above the suburbs medium. But it's still an interesting example of if you can probably have the best house in one of the most up-and-coming areas of Melbourne, why wouldn't you?
Or get in and do the work for yourself and end up creating something.
Absolutely,
like that beautiful house
in an area that you know is really going to hold value and just get better and better with time.
So in Greater Brizzy, we see that the Goldie Surfers Paradise is coming home strong.
The Gold Coast is absolutely coming home strong, and we know there's a massive appetite for sort of retirees or out-of-town people to go to the Surfers Paradise. The median in the Gold Coast is around $1.25 million for houses, which is obviously quite expensive, and only second most to Mermaid Beach in Queensland. But a huge amount of stock due to the sheer amount of units in the suburb. And it's also, the Gold Coast is the third most searched area in Queensland, so there's a lot of buyers looking there, obviously wanting that sort of dream of living in one of the most idyllic spots in Australia.
Might be a case of just flicking through, isn't it, and thinking with the weather down here and of course the tumultuous weather we're seeing around the country, the Goldie seems like a pretty nice place to dream about, doesn't it?
Yeah, I do, and there's a beautiful house that sold there in Surfers Paradise, just over $2 million in October, and it's characterised by sort of lots of high rises, but this one actually sold on the main river is a real highlight for what has sold this spring in the Gold Coast.
Sensational. It's so interesting, isn't it, to see the difference. I mean, we've talked prestige property there, we've got up-and-coming suburb. I mean, it's quite interesting to see what the different states rates are up to here.
I find it fascinating, and it's so reflective of the Australian property market that there's such a sort of vast spectrum of properties available. It's not, I think a lot of countries have very similar styles of housing all in one spot. In Australia, we've really got high and low, and I think particularly in Melbourne, you can see this market is shifting, particularly towards those first home buyers. If they can get in, while interest rates are still low, prices haven't quite gone up to what we think they may do next year yet. It can be that right time to sort of take that plunge before Christmas. But however, we still need we definitely need more listings. Agents are saying that going to early 2020, listings will probably improve on what they are this year, but only time will tell. But we do know there are vendors who are already listing for early autumn next year.
That's it. And perhaps if you're buying, don't hold out for a house that might come on the market, because you might be priced out of the market.
Yeah, that's what I think. A bird in the hand's worth more than two in the bush, basically.
Yeah, well, there's something for everyone as far as I can see. No matter where you're living across the country, you will be able to find your dream home.